artists and animators. Sweaty Eyeballs is an animation festival hosted in Baltimore, Maryland, which showcases unique, experimental, and diverse voices in animation with a focus on the craft that goes into independent animation. The festival's founder and director of programming, Phil Davis, started the festival in 2012. We invited Phil and the crew at Sweaty Eyeballs to discuss their festival's history, the role it plays in Baltimore's animation scene, and their advice for artists interested in finding community in animation. So Phil, Adam, Corrie, and Lynn, welcome to the stream.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Welcome. Thanks.
Let's start this off with some introductions. Phil, can you tell us about your path to your current role at Sweaty Eyeballs?
Sure. Back in 2007, I was working at the Creative Alliance, which is a nonprofit arts organization here in Baltimore. They do all sorts of stuff. They have a gallery, they do film screenings, they do performances. I'd worked there for about a year and then moved on and was doing other stuff. And they reached back out to me in 2012 and asked if I wanted to do a film screening, specifically animation. And I said, yeah, definitely. They knew that that's what I was interested in, and that's what kind of work I make is animated. And I put together a one-night screening, and I had no idea what was going to happen with it. I gathered local work, and I got some work from around the world, and put together a program. And the theater was packed. It was sold out. Which didn't happen that often at the time at Creative Alliance. So it was really exciting. And I realized, oh, this could become more than just like a one-off. And so I turned it into an annual invitational where I was curating films. For a while, I had a partner in crime, Max Porter, who's a great animator. He had moved to Baltimore, and he and I programmed the screenings together. And then in 2019, expanded it to a full-on festival when the Parkway Theater in Baltimore opened. And it's been going ever since. Yeah, and I'm an animator as well. And I also teach animation at Towson University here in Maryland.
It is also a common theme with all the panelists on this call right now, too.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Adam, can you tell us about your origin story and how you got to Sweaty Eyeballs?
Yeah. So I have bounced around the U.S. doing animation in lots of different cities, and actually had a screening of a film with Max Porter, and came to Baltimore. So I actually came here first because of animation, and then. Long story short, I moved here and Max was like, oh, you got to meet Phil. He called you the godfather of animation in Baltimore, and met Phil. And then we had tons in common. And over the years, as Sweaty Eyeballs became a full-fledged festival, I behind the scenes helped. I think one of the first years I lent you a laptop to cook some screening files on, and I also brought you some apple cider donuts.
Yes.
And I think the tasks just got more and more each year, and then I've just been the technical director for a second. So I came here for animation. I've stayed here for animation.
So if you want to be a technical director at a film festival, your secret is apple cider donuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
It's the true way to a director's heart.
Corrie, how did you find your way onto the Sweaty Eyeballs jury?
Yeah, so I also am an animator, and I teach at University of Maryland, Baltimore County. So I moved here in 2014, and I had a film that was kind of hitting festival circuits at that time, and one of my friends that I knew in Baltimore was Max Porter, and Max was like, "Oh, we've started this little invitational with my colleague Phil Davis over at Towson, and we would love to show your film." And so, right when I got here, I discovered this amazing screening of awesome animation from around the world, and I was able to be a part of it and show my film as a way of kind of like getting to know Baltimore, and getting to know that this was like an awesome place with a lot of animators that I had like no idea that there were so many people who were excited about animation here. So since then, I've always, like if I don't have a film that I want to show in the festival, I'm like, Phil, how can I help you? Like, let me do something to make sure that this keeps going, because it's so much work to plan and to curate and to keep a festival running and to manage all of the little details. And so, one of the ways that I help out is by being on the selection jury, or I have curated an exhibition that's associated with the festival, or just otherwise, trying to bring students and stuff just to make sure that it's like a thing that keeps going, because it's so good for the vibrancy of Baltimore to have this gem. Not every city gets to have an animation festival. I tell that to my students all the time. You are so lucky you have Sweaty Eyeballs here.
And Lynn, what was your path to the jury role at Sweaty Eyeballs?
So I moved to Baltimore in 2012 and soon met Phil Davis. And Phil was curating that first screening at the Creative Alliance and asked if I had anything to show. And I looked around because I was unpacking my house, and I found a 16mm print of a film, Cauldron, that I had made years before. So it wasn't something new, but I said, Phil, do you want to show this, 1990s film on 16mm? And he said yes. So showed that, and then actually I'm now colleagues with Phil. We both teach at Towson University, and I've helped out, and for a while Sweaty Eyeballs was doing like special event screenings, and I'd always go to those. There was an amazing one that Phil organized with local musicians playing new music to Lotte Reiniger's The Adventures of Prince Ahmed. It was just one of the best movie-going experiences I've ever had. And now with the regular festival, I actually teach a class in the fall called Contemporary Animated Shorts, and I've set it up specifically so that my class falls when Phil's festival, when Sweaty Eyeballs is happening, so that my students, have to go as one of their events. And now I've written in that their paper assignment is to write a review of either the gallery exhibit, because there's always the past 4 years there's been a gallery exhibit, or one of the screenings, the Baltimore Showcase or the international screenings. So they have to write a festival review. So, and sometimes Phil pops in and tells my class about what it's like to run a festival.
Yeah, it's great.
Lynn, what do you feel makes Sweaty Eyeballs distinct from other animation festivals?
I think that it's really friendly. I mean, all animation festivals are friendly, but first of all, it's here, and that, like Corrie said, it's so important to have one where you are, and to have a community of animation that's like the kind of animation that I like. It's like interesting, weird, strange stuff that you don't see every day of the week. It's edgy and international, and sometimes funny, sometimes dark. There's all kinds of different things. I think Phil has really good taste in animation, and also because we're jurors, we also get to like have a little bit of a finger in the pie and get to see the kinds of things we like. And it's just really I think the idea of talking about the community that it's built is really important, because living in a place where people know and understand that animation is something more than what some people, not everybody understands all the range of kinds of materials and, stories that can be told through animation. It's just nice to be part of that community here.
Phil, as the director of programming, what do you feel makes your event different from other animation festivals?
Yeah. I guess a big part of it is like that dual like support of the local community here in Baltimore, which there is like a pretty thriving animation community here, and then bringing in work, especially international work that people in this region haven't seen, and it's obviously we're showing stuff that shows at other big animation festivals around the world. I like compare my programming to other ones, and I'm like, oh yeah, I showed that one that played at Ottawa, or that one that played at Annecy. But I do. It's funny to me. Almost every year we'll have like maybe one Academy Award nominated thing that gets in there, but usually it's not. Usually we're getting the stuff, or I'm programming the stuff that's a little more under the radar or edgier or weirder. And as a programmer too, it's a lot of it is this combo of like finding work, seeking out work. And like at this point, I've been doing this for a while. And so I know quite a few animators. And so I'm reaching out to people and seeing what their new work is that they're making. And then the beauty of getting a call for entry is that you just discover new stuff and new people too. So it's this combination of like tapping into the artists that I already know about who are making excellent things, and then always being pleasantly surprised by new stuff that's coming out. And obviously as a teacher too, teaching student animators, it's very exciting to have this constant like new blood coming in with new ideas and new techniques. It's great. Yeah, I mean, and I think it's like this idea of like groundbreaking or cutting edge or edgy, those terms come into play for this festival. Like not always showing work that is like commercially viable, I guess. Stuff that maybe wouldn't get airtime on TV or a streaming service or something, but more like, oh, you can't show that. It's got too much nudity, or it's got too much violence, or it's funny, but it's funny in a very awkward and weird way. So yeah, personally, that's the stuff I'm gravitating to. I like things that are sort of questioning what this medium can do.
There's a bit of an opinion behind the curation.
Yeah, for sure. I guess. It's tricky.
But I mean, it's also shared, right, Phil? Like, I mean, that's why you have a jury, right? So it's not just Phil,
Yeah, it's like I want other people's opinions on things for sure, and like know how you feel about it. I really like this. Maybe you like it. Oh, you don't like it. Okay. So it's a bouncing back of ideas with other people too. I also like when you curating or programming, I try to approach it like a mixtape, right? That's dating myself. I'm old. Nobody now makes mixtapes anymore, but I used to make mixtapes a lot. And the whole thing with it was like, you're not going to make a mixtape with all like the same tempo song on it, right? Or all super exciting songs, or all sad songs, or whatever. It's a variety. You're trying to like take people on a journey over the course of time that it takes to listen to a mixtape. But in this case, it's animation. So it's like some stuff you want to be longer form and kind of slow burn. Some stuff you want to be quick and punchy and funny. And some stuff, it's okay if it's sad. So having this sort of like variety of emotion that you can go through while watching a program, since we're mostly shorts, I think is really important too. Like
you can't have a roller coaster that just goes down.
Yeah, exactly. And like sometimes I have to check myself and be like, look through the things we're picking through and be like, man, we have way too much sad stuff. I need some more funny things, or so a lot of it, I mean, getting into film festivals is hard, and it's like, you're at the whim of people making those decisions, but it's like sometimes you just get lucky. It's like, oh, I made a short, snappy, funny movie, and this festival needed one little like 2-minute hilarious animation sandwiched between two 10-minute kind of dark and somber animations. So yeah, kind of answers your question.
Yeah, Adam, as someone who's had a film in competitions worldwide, how does Sweaty Eyeball compare to other animation festivals?
Yeah, I think something Phil just said about supporting non-commercially viable films. I think there's something magical about Baltimore, and there's like a ton of creative energy in Baltimore. but not like a huge industry. Partially, like that's a whole nother topic, but I think it means that the stuff that's happening it has a very specific flavor, and to then have so many creatives and then have a place for all of them to, like, animators especially, like at Micah we joke that animators are like cockroaches. Like, you turn on the lights and they all just like scatter and scurry around, and it feels like everyone comes out to go to these events. And so it's just like I think a lot of animation festivals are like this, but because it's so many creatives going to see the films, we're all like coming out of our studios, and we need socializing. I think it's important, and feel there's a concurrent gallery show usually that happens with it, so a lot of different ways for people to socialize and meet each other, and it keeps the network is always, people are always moving here or leaving, and it kind of just keeps that nest like tumbling or something. Yeah. Did I answer that?
I think you did.
Corrie, from your point of view, what makes Sweaty Eyeballs distinct?
I think being in Baltimore is like really influences the feeling of the festival. Like it's both an international festival and also a local festival. Like it has that sort of it has that cozy feeling, and there's bigger animation I think every animation festival really has its own vibe and its own sense, but this is a festival where you can really meet people and talk to them, and you have time to go out to dinner and like time to hang out at the after party and then see them over the course of a weekend. And I think that's something that I think, people don't necessarily think, oh, I should go to a festival in Baltimore, but like if your film gets in, you should come and meet us. Like, we're awesome and we want to meet you. And I think when people come to Baltimore for this festival, it's really awesome to talk to them, because they become part of our community here, and we do have a really vibrant arts community that loves fringe, that loves outsider art, and loves just doing things that's very DIY. And I think that's sort of the roots of this festival too, is just like somebody had a good idea and they made it happen, because this is a place where you can make things happen when you have, a wild idea. And so I think that's, like how Phil was describing, it sort of just kind of like comes up out of the enthusiasm of the community.
Yeah. Corrie, from your point of view, what's the most interesting or challenging part of judging films?
I think there's a lot of, maybe a misconception that like the films that win are the best films, and that I've been on juries at various festivals, and it's always a little bit of a negotiation of, if there's certain films that really move you and impact you, and you want to give a lot of films awards, and you want to like honor a lot of films, and so the ones that end up winning, sometimes it's like, it's obvious and everybody's like, this is a really amazing film and it just needs to be like noted. And other times, like the juries can be totally on different pages, and you have to sort of like sort that out, and it ends up being a compromise which one wins. And so I think that it's always nice to win a prize, but it's okay if you don't win a prize, and it's okay if you don't get into a festival. Like Phil was saying, sometimes it's just because your film is 30 seconds too long to get into that festival. It's not because they didn't like it. And so I think that's one of the things that's always a little bit difficult for me to grapple with as a filmmaker, because I always want to win the award, but also I know that the awards aren't really the reason we make the films. We make the films so that we can connect to an audience, and that they can connect to us, and that idea, whatever idea it is behind the film, gets out there.
Lynn, from your point of view, what's the most interesting or challenging part of judging films?
Yeah, I think what Corrie said is really true. I guess one thing that I've noticed as a pre-screener is that I really pay attention to the sound a lot. And I think that films really need to have good soundtracks. Often there'll be something that's like really visually striking, but it might just have music slapped on as an afterthought, and then it feels like wallpaper. And so I think that's something that I tend to pay a lot of attention to, because I think that the sound is so important and maybe sometimes overlooked by the creators. And then in terms of, judging, it's true that, it may just be what strikes you that day, or something like maybe something's didn't take the most time and the most effort, but it just, there's something about it that seems unique or innovative. And those things might, you might feel like valuing that. So I think jurors do have different opinions, and I have seen like it's kind of a discussion often to figure out what wins awards.
Phil, zooming out a little bit, what's the most interesting or challenging part of running Animation Festival?
Oh man. Well, I think the most interesting part is just getting to meet new people, right? Because it's like, especially in animation, there's in this world of like independent animation, where a lot of people are working like solo or in very small teams, like not a big production. They don't get out much. And so giving an opportunity where people can come together and meet and talk about animation and talk about their work and like meet other weirdos who hang out in their bedrooms all day drawing is awesome. And I kind of getting to also like, it's funny to me that you all are like, oh, you got to meet Phil or something. But for me, it's just like great when I'm like, I get to just like hang out here in Baltimore, and then a new person comes and is like, hey, Phil, have you heard about this person? They're an animator. And I'm like, great, let's hang out. So I think like just, the social aspect of it and meeting people is extremely important in this art form. And you build connections and then you like refer people, and there's this like, I don't know. It's like to me, it's like a gifting community or something. Like we're like giving our gifts of like the films people are making, and people are receiving those and giving feedback. And I don't know, there's something beautiful about that, when you make a film or make a work and it just goes out there, say on the internet or something, it's a very different experience, right? Like, okay, maybe some troll on YouTube is putting comments on your video, but you're not meeting people. You're not like going out and getting a drink with them or having dinner and talking more. And that to me is like what it's all about, is like that connectivity of these like-minded people who are creative and interested in this. I mean, the other thing about it is that like, as somebody who's doing a lot of the programming is I just end up watching a lot of animation, like 400 to 500 films a year, sometimes more, which kind of hurts after a while. And I will say that one thing as somebody who's like helping to make the decisions of what gets in and what doesn't, like, you get tired watching that many films. And so like when something really stands out, is either like visually innovative or, technically doing something I've never seen before, or just the story, the character development, like really grabs you. That's exciting. So yeah, being able to just like watch that much stuff is, I don't know, I feel like it's like a privilege that I get to like spend time doing that.
Yeah, I think it's also worth thinking about too, that like for the number of films that are in any festival, consider all the films that submitted and didn't get in.
Yeah.
It's a process of like distillation to like find like the most sweaty eyeballs films you can find.
Yeah. I mean, I always, every year, it's just like, I have like tremendous guilt of the giant stack that were in the maybe pile, films that are like, these are great. These films are awesome. We just like, we can't have the festival be 2 months long. Like it has to condensed into a reasonable amount of time. So yeah, it's like every time there's always great work. And like, so for people applying to festivals, like, don't get discouraged if you don't get in. It's just, it's a limited number of spaces, basically. It's tough. And you could make a really great film and it just like doesn't fit. Or like Lynn was saying, it's like 30 seconds too long, right? Like that happens a lot. I will say longer films, way harder to program. It's got to be like pretty awesome if it's over 15 minutes long. So for people just getting started, keep it shorter.
One of the things Phil said about community and meeting people, one thing that's been great is in some past years, Phil's brought in an artist to have a whole retrospective. And that's been like Joanna Priestley came one year, and I knew I'd met her before, I'd seen her work, but to see a whole retrospective and have my students see everything new and fresh, see all her work, that's just really impactful. And to bring that here, that kind of, programming is really cool.
Oh, wow. Adam, on the technical side, what's the most interesting or challenging part of running an animation festival?
We're, for better for worse, like animators are all weirdos, and we make things all our own different ways. So that then means that file types, file names are often like Phil and I will be like chasing down someone who submitted an email that doesn't work anymore. Just like weirdo stuff that I think probably, happens in a lot of places. But yeah, and then just because animation often with Sweaty Eyeballs, it's like pushing, being innovative. So strange frame sizes, aspect ratios, and frame rates, just like making all of that like cohere into one screening block. But it's usually like pretty good. I think the nice part about the type of films that get in are these like awesome indie folks who are like, they basically killed themselves to make this film. So they're like, it's cool to get to like have them pass their baby off to us, and then us like, we're like, okay, we're gonna take care of this and do this thing. So it's super rewarding, but there's always some, random technical thing that we have to figure out. So mostly just file chasing.
Well, with that in mind, like for artists interested in submitting their films to your festival, is there anything that they should keep in mind?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's many things to keep in mind, but yeah, like Lynn was saying, sound is extremely important. Making sure your sound is working well, that the levels are good. I've seen plenty of films where it's like the film is really interesting, but maybe it has dialogue and it's just you can't hear it, you can't make it out. But also, yeah, like just thinking about timing and duration, and is the piece you're making warrant like the length of the film? Like so many times I've seen stuff that's like a 10-minute animation that really probably should have been a 5-minute animation. And that's tricky because it comes down to some taste too as well in terms of pacing, but you have to be considerate of your audience when you're submitting, but I would say too, just from like, if you get in, when you get into festivals, just being really good about communication. There's nothing that'll burn a bridge faster than if you're like, you've been accepted and people are reaching out to you, like Adam is like trying to get your print and trying to get your press kit, and you're ghosting or you're half responding or, that kind of stuff. Like to me, I'm like, ugh, I don't want to work with this person again. They are terrible at their file management or getting us stuff on a deadline. So yeah, I mean, a big part of it is just being like really good about communicating. But I also I will say there's nothing wrong with reaching out to people who are like in charge of things. I will say maybe at other festivals, this isn't the case, but at Sweaty Eyeballs, like my email's out there in the open and people send me emails all the time and I read their emails and write them back. So like, if you could submit a film, but then you could also send an email and be like, hey, I just submitted my film. Like, I hope you like it. Here's my backstory, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to remember your name a lot more, than if you never reached out or tried to communicate. So, I mean, in the early days of doing this too, I was doing a lot of that myself. I was cold calling animators. I would just like write a friendly email and be like, I love your work. I saw it at this other festival, or I've seen your previous film. Would you like to show your new film here at our festival? And I think a big part of it is just like being good at composing emails to people to get them to respond to you.
Adam, is there anything that you should add that artists interested in submitting films to Sweaty Eyeball should consider?
If you are local to Baltimore or can come to the festival, come check it out. I think like meeting people, meeting Phil, it's a great way to just like get on people's radar and go to film festivals, go see stuff. Like, yeah, the idea of taste, like dial your taste in so that you know when, oh, like this scene is way too long. Like, it's a weird thing. I like time-based work is you're kind of like claiming people's life force by like saying, watch my thing for this 2 minutes. You need to earn that. Like, it's actually a little disrespectful when something's like way too long. Maybe I'm being glib, but like go see stuff. Just take a lot of stuff in. Yeah. That's my pointer.
My life force is really low, but like try.
Phil's given a lot of his life force to watching animation.
Well, Corey, with that in mind, like as a juror, what are some things that you think that people entering into Sweaty Eyeball should consider, especially if it's like your life force at stake here?
Yeah, it's just, yeah, I think that's a great analogy, Adam. I'm going to start using that. Just keep in mind the life force. I mean, like Lynn said, sound is one of the things that gets me too sometimes, is just sort of, if there's not, if the balance of levels isn't right, or if it's sort of just kind of put on at the end as a placeholder as opposed to like really thoughtfully done to augment. I mean, any sound designer will argue that the sound is like 90% of the experience, which of course the animators will, I mean, it's probably around 50-50 really, like it's so important. And then, I think that there's, one of the things that just sometimes gets me is just not really thinking like an animator as far as like frame rate and stuff, and being so caught up in the story you want to tell that you don't actually animate the actual film. And so working on craft in a way, and there can certainly be just like, really funny, really kind of, old school, low frame rate animations that work great. But I think I see a lot of work, especially student work, that is that is just concerned with getting to the end, as opposed to really concentrating on the process and learning how to use the fundamentals of animation to make the characters come alive. So it's more like watching still images and unfolding a story, as opposed to watching a character or a story really come alive and capture the audience. And so I think that's something to really consider when you're thinking about how to put together your production, is like, how full animation are you going to do, or what shortcuts can you reasonably take to get the production done without compromising the experience of the viewer.
Yeah.
Lynn, is there anything that you'd recommend for artists that are submitting their films to Sweaty Eyeballs?
Yeah, actually, Corrie taught me this lesson, which Corrie often uses sand and other unusual under the camera techniques, and I use clay on glass. And Corrie said to me, like when I was making one of my films, it's really good if you could have like a making of process somewhere, or talk about your method, because your method is part of what's appealing about your project. And so I think that if people, especially if you're doing something unusual, technically, or something that you can't tell just by looking at it how it was made, if you can write that in a cover letter, or have a little making of behind the scenes, peek behind the scenes that accompanies your press kit. Anything that helps, people love to ask, how'd you make that? Those are the two questions. How'd you make that? How long did it take? Those are the things people all want to know about animation. And, sometimes I feel like, why does anybody always care only about how long this took me? Don't they care about what it's about? But but it's a legitimate question, I think. I mean, something about animation is it's our hands, it's our effort, it's our time. And as much of that as you can kind of explain about how you poured yourself into this project, that can help to kind of create a story behind the film.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things that's kind of a danger of the craft of animation is that it's possible for the audience to take it at face value, like the final export. And there's so much more work that goes into that in the final frames that they see.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing to piggyback on it too, like this is something I always tell my students, but it kind of applies to anybody getting into this medium, is just like, why is it animated? Like, why are you making this an animation? Why isn't it a live action film? Why isn't it a comic book? Why are you doing an animation instead? Like, what are you using this medium for, I guess? And when I'm looking at films too, sometimes that question pops up in my head. I'll be like, this is kind of cool, but like, why did they animate it? This seems like a live action film, just with animated characters. It's not doing anything with animation that is unique to the medium or interesting. So yeah, I mean, like, kind of asking that question of yourself as you're like making work and submitting and trying to figure out what it is you're doing. Like, as somebody who's done both, like I've made some live action stuff and some animated stuff. There's definitely like a reason for doing one or the other. But yeah, I think sometimes people get lost in their own story or vision they're trying to tell, and they stop thinking about the fact that like, is this medium the appropriate medium for that story?
And animation just takes so much time that that's the question, is why invest all of this time and effort in drawing or puppeting or modeling, like all of these little details. And like, the benefit of animation is you can make magic, right? You can make imagination and do things that you couldn't do in live action films. And so I think that's like what really excites me when I see films that surprise me or that have something that I've never seen before. Because, once you've watched a lot of animated films, you start to see like that there's like certain trends happen and there's certain plots that you see all the time. And I think this also happens like when we teach students too, is like we're always kind of reaching for the low-hanging fruit sometimes, because it's the stuff that we've seen and we like, and it's at the top of our head, but you really have to like dig into your head and stir it around and get all the stuff from the bottom to come up, because that's the really interesting stuff. And that's the stuff that's worth putting in the time to animate. I think if you're going to invest so much time, you want to do something that nobody's seen before.
Yeah, I also think it's interesting too, because like different mediums have different strengths and limitations. Like in live action, you can have a bunch of extras on screen. You just need to pay like the day rate for the actors to show up. For animation, you have a bunch of extras in the scene. Well, you've got to design those, and then you have to animate them all, and they're all on screen. That is a problem.
Yeah.
So like, that's I think that's kind of an area where you have to like think about like what's the intent behind using this medium.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes also just simplicity is better, right? Like I'd happily watch like a little dot move around the screen with excellent expression and pacing and motion, as opposed to a beautifully rendered human figure that barely moves.
Phil, as an instructor, what value do you get out of running the Sweaty Eyes Festival?
I mean, the main value I get is that I force my students to come. It's like I'm trying to expose my students as much as possible to like the huge variety of what this medium can be. And running a festival is a great way to do that, because I'm bringing work in from around the world and also from the community at large. And so it's a way to expose them to stuff that they're not going to see otherwise, right? It's but also just another advantage is that then I I'm like learning about these artists and these animators myself, and then I'm pointing my students towards them as means of inspiration. And then also, like, when they come to the festival, I think at first it's always a little tricky sometimes to like get them out of their shells and be like, come on, you got to come to this thing. You're going to come to this screening. And they always come back and are saying like, oh, I met all these other animators and students who from another school who are also animator. And I'm like, yeah, that's the point. So getting them to actually like connect and meet and network and find other people in their community is really, really important as students, not just from like a professional standpoint, but also just being in a creative community. You need to find those other people. Yeah.
I always love at the Baltimore block every year, the like Q&A after is like 20 people on the stage and just watching people like hand the microphone back and forth.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And then Phil makes us do a group hug, which is so wonderful.
You gotta hug it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to throw the question to you, Adam. What value do you get of participating in Sweaty Eyeballs?
Get to watch so much. Sorry, I swear I'm not gonna. So much spectacular animation. Just, I think, like being hidden in my studio in the dark, like being out and meeting people, seeing new techniques that people have spent like so much time, like, you know, animating sand or clay or other mediums that I don't work in, that my voice isn't like, that's not what comes out of me, to like feel their passion. It just I then go back into my studio and my like batteries are charged for a long time. It's just it's always super inspiring. One part of that we didn't mention that's like a fun little nugget is basically every year Phil does there's a exquisite corpse intro at the beginning of the festival, and it's like 3 seconds of animation from like a dozen or bunch of different animators, local and elsewhere, and it just had, I feel like that's a good taste of what the festival is. It's just like lots of techniques, but all kind of everyone coming out of like the shrubs and woods to like, you know, watch each other's stuff and just like cheer each other on. So I get a lot out of it. Yeah.
Corrie, what do you get out of participating in Sweaty Eyeballs?
I love watching short films. So that's like my first thing, is I just love being able to go and see films in a theater and see them on the big screen. And I think that's one of the reasons that, you know, even though we have streaming and everything now, like festivals still exist, because number one, they're where you can meet real live people and talk to them and nerd out. Particularly animators love just like, again, asking each other, how'd you do that? What do you mean? Like, so did you do that on 2s or on 3s? Like those little silly animator questions that nobody else understands. We love that. And so I love watching films and thinking about the process. And I also love bringing my students, like, because it opens up their minds to what animation can be beyond what they've just seen kind of growing up in their own spheres, right? And there's a lot of, I mean, they watch a lot of, you know, students watch a ton of weird, awesome animation on the internet. And but going to a festival is something a little bit special because it is in a theater, and there is, especially when the theater is packed and you feel the energy of it. And so there's something about that in-person quality that I think really excites people about the craft. So that's like a huge gift that I was given as a student, because one of my professors took me to the Ottawa Film Festival and it just blew my mind. And I'm so excited that I can bring our students to Sweaty Eyeballs here in Baltimore without having to go 10 hours on a bus to Ottawa. So it's just, it gives them a little idea of what it is like to be a professional animator.
And Lynn, as an instructor, what value do you get out of participating in Sweaty Eyeballs?
So I think, like the others said, it's really great that my students can go, and have this specific class designed just so that I have a group of students who I feel like I can force to go there. So that's great, not force. I mean, once they get there, they love it. It's true that they are often sort of like, you have to kind of say, this is going to be worth it. And then they're like, oh, I didn't even know what this was, because students don't really know about short films. They don't really know that this format even exists, short animations. And then seeing them in a theater, just gives it such presence. And I think the gallery part of it is also really great, because it's showing how animation can break out of the rectangular screening room frame. I mean, we love being in the screening room, we love the big theater, but it's also cool to see that animation can be presented in other ways, can be in a fine arts space, that people are doing innovative things. And then to also see the physical materials behind it, it just gives another real level. I think the fact that this is a film festival designed and run by an animator who's invited other animators to help, it just, like that idea that Phil decided that the trailer, the little, the festival, whatever it's called, that would be collectively made, I think gives a sense of the collaborative community, welcoming spirit of Sweaty Eyeballs.
The last question I have is, where can our audience go to learn more about Sweaty Eyeballs and about your work? Let's start with Phil.
Sure. Well, so Sweaty Eyeballs, it's just sweatyeyeballs.com. That's the website that gives you all the information. On Instagram, I think we're Sweaty Eyeballs Animation. And those are sort of your two main places to go to find out more info about it. Yeah, and that has the website has just been updated with information about this year's festival, which is on September 12th. So coming up pretty soon. Yeah.
And Phil, do you want to plug any of your animated projects?
Oh, me personally? Well, so my website is just phildavisvideo.com. Yeah, one of the things I will say about running an animation festival is it makes it hard to make any of your own work. But I do have some new things in the pipeline. I personally, recently, I've been making Godzilla stop motion animation with my son in my basement. But I do a lot of hand-drawn frame-by-frame animation as well, using software, using your guys' software, Toon Boom. Yeah. New films.
Adam, that's awesome. Adam, where can our audience go to learn more about your work?
My website is my name, Adam Davies, adamdavies.com. There are a bunch of other Adam Davieses. Yeah, and lately I've been making like strange kinetic sculptures, which haven't hit my website yet, but soon will be there. Kind of trying to think about animation outside of the rectangle, like what happens when you take the time out of animation, what's left. Yeah.
Corrie, where can our audience go to learn more about your work?
So my website is corrieparks.com. It's CORRIE. And you can find out about some really interesting, weird approaches to sand animation and other stop motion techniques there. Yeah, check it out.
And Lynn, where can our audience go to learn more about your work?
So my website is lynntomlinson.com. I need to update it. I think more updated is, we have a great thing in Baltimore here called the Baker Artist Portfolios. Mm-hmm. My Baker Artist Portfolio, I think, is slightly more updated in terms of what's there. And I'm not sure what that would be, Baker Artists, and then you can search my name, Lynn Tomlinson. And then my Instagram is @ClayOnGlass.
All right. Well, Phil, Adam, Lynn, Corrie, thank you so much for taking time to talk about your work at the Sweaty Eyeballs Festival. And thank you so much to our audience for taking part as well. If you enjoyed this discussion, you might be interested in storyboarding your next project to enter into a festival. Artists can download a 21-day trial of Storyboard Pro from our website. The website is toonboom.com. And keep an eye out on Toon Boom social media channels for September's live stream schedule. We have some great interviews lined up, including a live stream with X-Ray Alpha Charlie on her music videos for the indie band Good Kid, They're great. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to tune in next time.